came flying down, and LAPD brought in some extra patrols to make sure they had the security up top, and now there's still more arrests, and they want to clear these cars as well and get this area of Broadway open as the arrests continue here in downtown. Christine, Alex, to you.
Well, welcome sight to not see the looting that we've seen in the past few days. I guess when you have something like a protest where people have great passion, you're going to have those people who violate the curfew and are willing to be arrested, be placed in these cuffs here, to be taken away, because certainly it's well known that the curfew is 6 p.m. So you have these people here who obviously knowingly stayed out past the curfew.
Well, that's the thing. The LAPD was making announcements saying the curfew is now in effect 6 p.m. and the marchers continued. And LAPD, if you will, to their credit, did not move in 1 minute after 6. They let the marchers continue, hoping that they might disperse. But then when you had a large crowd coming down here along Broadway, it was obvious that they weren't. They still were in one collective group. They were not dispersing. So LAPD gave them a little more time, maybe by my count, maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And that maybe gave them, LAPD, an opportunity to get their tactical squad in force. They surrounded them right here on Broadway, then quickly sealed it off, and now it's just a matter of making the arrest one by one as they're led away. Most here, as you point out, Christine, the charge will be breaking that curfew.
Have any of these folks been saying anything as they've been arrested, or
if I may be honest with you, I can't repeat it, but they would say, well, I don't even want to even try to paraphrase what they've been saying, but I'll leave it to your speculation. Okay. But no, they're not, other than yelling maybe Black Lives Matters, and then when they see the TV camera and our affiliation, it gets some nasty expletives start flying.
All right, Ed Lascos, thank you so much downtown. We check in now with Haley Winslow, who is standing by with Sheriff Alex Villanueva from LA County. Haley.
Yes, we just got here in front of the Chinese Theater with all of his men and women in uniform, and I wanted to ask you, Sheriff, thank you very much for meeting with us. What is your plan of attack here?
Well, we have since we went on 12-hour shifts, our B shift, which is from 6 p.m. into the morning, we have a lot of personnel, and we're out all over the county. We want to make sure we're highly visible, encourage, obviously, the people that are now violating the curfew to go home where it's safe, and that way we can focus on people that are trying to take an opportunity here and start looting.
What's your message to the community? We are under a curfew. There's a lot of people in Hollywood, downtown, who are not abiding by it.
They need to go home, really. It makes it safer for everyone that we start separating the lawful protesters, and they're done with their protests, and now what's left is securing the entire county. So everyone stays safe. None of our businesses get trashed, and most importantly, people don't lose more jobs than they haven't already lost because of the pandemic.
And what is your message to protesters who are fighting tonight and throughout the week for racial justice and for equality?
Well, we're fighting for the same cause, and that's why I joined law enforcement to begin with, because I wanted to be a force for good. And my entire career has been devoted to that. As a Latino myself, I understand it can be sometimes challenging when you're a minority in a majority white-dominated society. However, we are making profound changes. From 1992 to today, it's very, very different. A lot of things have changed. We still have a lot more work to do, but we're on the right track, and we want to work with the community to continue on that track.
So tell me what you guys are doing here and what kind of the plan is for the next few hours.
Well, the group you saw here right here, this is a special response, or the sheriff's response team, SRT team, and they're designed for, they're equipped for passive resistors, a non-lethal force, all the things they can do to disrupt protests that obviously have to be disrupted because they're unlawful assemblies, and they encourage other acts like looting and vandalism, things like that.
As the sheriff of one of the biggest cities in the world, what change do you think we need to see?
Well, I think one was very important, finally, is we got all sheriffs, all chiefs of police, and the profession as a whole that thoroughly denounced the actions of the officer that caused George Floyd's death. But we can't stop there. It's the other three that stood by and did nothing. We denounced them just as strongly, and we want to make sure they're brought to justice as well. And that should be a clarion call to the entire profession. It is just not acceptable, period. We have to hold people accountable when they cross the line, but we have to support the system the way it works. We have to support legitimate law enforcement functions.
And is the National Guard still on standby?
They are still deployed throughout the county, and they're assisting us by protecting at securing a lot of the places that have been previously vandalized, and some of our assets of high value, obviously the sheriff station, police stations, the large shopping centers that were targeted of looting before. So they're a force multiplier for law enforcement.
All right, Sheriff, I don't want to take up much of your time. Just one more question. To people out there who may be watching this, who are thinking about looting tonight, who are thinking about causing violence, what would you say to them?
That's a bad idea. We'll be coming for you.
Thank you, Sheriff. All right, we'll send it back to you guys. That's Sheriff Alex
If possible, Haley, I'd be interested to know what he thinks should happen to the, one more question. What do you think should happen to those other 3 officers in terms of what specific charges should they face?
Sheriff Alex is asking you, what do you think should happen to the other 3 officers involved in Minneapolis? What charges do you think that they should face?
They should face similar charges. I'm not very familiar with the Minneapolis or the Minnesota Penal Code. However, they should face, to the fullest extent of the law, charges similar to the ones that the main person already faced.
And just lastly, we've been covering these protests for several days, and the protesters don't seem to think that law enforcement is understanding their point of view. What would you say to them to help them understand that we are all in this together and we are on their side, we're all on the same side?
Well, I can tell you that accountability is tops. Since I took office, I've had to terminate 35 deputies already. I've arrested my own employees, and I've sought their own prosecution when they cross the line and engage in criminal conduct. And we have one of our deputies is on prosecution right now by the district attorney's office. Throughout the nation, we've had some cases where they have been prosecuted successfully for unlawful shootings, for example. The case in Chicago was the one in South Carolina. That's another example. So it is happening, but you have to realize we have to deal with the same criminal justice system, be it just an average suspect engaged in a criminal activity or a law enforcement officer acting under color of authority engaged in a criminal act. They still are bound by the very same criminal justice system, so we have to use preponderance evidence. We have to prove cases beyond reasonable doubt. And when it comes particularly in shootings, and it involves law enforcement, the people who are charged them with murder, but people have to understand that murder requires malice of forethought. You have to prove that in a court of law. So district attorneys are always stuck with, how do we charge someone with murder, which involves malice of forethought, if it was an act that occurred right at the point where there's no planning involved? That's always been one of the hurdles in charging law enforcement when they do something like that. But it is happening occasionally, and when the facts are there, it needs to happen. We need to make sure that district attorneys understand this, that the community has to hold our profession accountable when they cross the line.
Some protesters are saying we need to defund the police here in LA. What do you say to that?
I'd say, you know what, we live in a democratic society. If we poll the majority of our community, they'll say, of course not. We want to fund the police department fully, the sheriff's department. We're the most understaffed and underfunded agency in the entire nation. And as it is, we're performing miracles with the few personnel that we do have. We need to have that full funding because that's one of the primary obligations of government is to secure the safety of the community.
Thank you. Anything else that you'd like to add tonight?
No, I think you guys covered very well.
All right.
All right.
I think he's done.
It was very generous with his time. Thank you, Haley. We appreciate it. And thank the sheriff as well, who has spoken with us, Christine, every night since this started. And we appreciate him taking time out to talk with our viewers.
We are looking right now live at downtown where we are focusing on the Sprint building where we saw, it seemed to be maybe 30 people run inside the Sprint building. Now you think of Sprint being the store with the phones. This is the building that also has apartments. People live above this building. So we are watching now. It looks like LAPD officers are looking inside that entrance where people were able to go inside with the entire crowd going inside and police making those arrests due to curfew violations.
So let's bring into the conversation now Moses Castillo, who many of us have dealt with in his role as an LAPD detective.